And now you're tuning in to the Women Unplugged podcast.
Hey, plugs! Welcome to episode 6 of our Women Unplugged podcast. This one is going to be called Interracial Dating. Can SheBloom? We have a very special guest today. She is a singer, a songwriter. She is a musician and recording artist. Her name is SheBloom. Follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter at womenunplugged_. And make sure to subscribe, comment, and like us on YouTube at Women Unplugged Podcast. I'm your girl, Bougie Candi.
I'm Penny, short for Penning for Your Thoughts, aka Annie Oakley with the pen.
And I'm your girl, Levina J. I got the news, the tea, whatever you need.
Levina,
What's the news?
So, we had a moment of silence for Ahmaud Arbery. And since that has been a massive, massive story, not only in social media, but obviously in the news due to the injustice, it has sparked a fire in our lovely city and our lovely state of Georgia, to where there is now a conversation, according to CBS News, about us bringing back the hate crime law. Now, in addition to us bringing back this law, another conversation that I wanted to bring up with you ladies was Breonna Taylor. Do you ladies know who Breonna Taylor is?
Yep.
yes, I do.
Unfortunately, we all do. And just a brief, if you don't know, briefly, Breonna Taylor was actually shot 8 times in her Louisville, Kentucky home. Police came to her home looking for another assailant, is what they're calling him, according to the Louisville Police Department. Another assailant who was actually already in police custody. So they went into her home. He was not there, and she lost her life. And this is another case that we have here in 2020 that we're losing lives. We're losing the lives of our men, and we're losing the lives of our women. Obviously, both of these crimes are completely terrible. But is it even worth it for our state to try and bring back the hate crime law? And I mean, in addition to that, does it seem to you, as well as me, because I know for me it does, that our Black men and women are just becoming hashtags? Because, honey, I'm tired.
Girl, you and me both. Honestly, when I can watch groups of people with weapons belligerently yell at police officers or lock arms to shield a police officer from entering an establishment where they weren't social distancing, or even a mother at a park having the luxury to argue with a police officer for an hour and still be taken away in handcuffs ever so gently. It's just a matter of, to answer your question, Levina, no, I don't believe a bill being passed will help until, it won't matter until the lives of our people matter. It's becoming more blatant than ever that our lives do not matter to this country. And it's heartbreaking when you see these images, when you have these visuals time and time again. We're witnessing public executions of men, women, and children in some cases. So I would like to put the ball in their court. What do you want us to do to be deemed deserving of life? Because we're not even talking about equal rights at this point. We're talking about being looked at as human. So I don't know, but I would like to put the ball in their court. I would like to have as many weekly or bi-weekly meetings in every community of every city as often as possible, just for there to be a conversation. Because what is a bill going to do, really and truly? You know, we thought the Emancipation Proclamation was going to do the job, and it clearly has not. So I don't know. In terms of, first of all, rest in peace, Breonna Taylor. Our prayers are with your loved ones. Let's play the devil's advocate. Let's say she's married to a kingpin. If Dylan Roof can be escorted out of a vicinity where he murdered innocent people, not only in handcuffs, but a bulletproof vest at that, you could have arrested this Black woman and taken her down to the precinct and questioned her as you were supposed to do. Do your job. So that's where I am with that.
Yeah, I get it.
So for me, I can't agree with Penny more, where these stories are just like so commonplace, right? I feel like on a psychological level, when we're constantly seeing it in the media, not only in our communities, but on an international scale, like we are all desensitized to seeing Black people just dying, okay? Where the reaction that we should give, the reaction that, you know, would be given to anyone else in other ethnic groups or racial groups, it's just simply not being given to our Black women, men and women. And we have to acknowledge it. We have to, as a community, start putting more emphasis on these things outside of just social media. A lot of these things that go on in politics or that go on in our communities, we have to be more active on both ends. And I feel like a lot of times in the Black community, we shy away from politics. We shy away from rubbing shoulders with politicians, rubbing shoulders with our Congress people, our councilmen and women, when those are our lawmakers. Those are the people who are really passing codes and policies that can eventually lead to state legislation that will eventually lead to federal legislation, right? But on the other side is more so, like Penny was saying, the reaction that we initially get when these things happen. The lack of justice to me comes from the fact that there's never immediate relief or action when these incidents happen. There's never like I said before, the initial reaction that would happen from any other ethnic or racial group being targeted or in genocide, as I would call it, racially, economically, socially. I mean, we're being targeted on so many levels. It just comes to a point where you do have to say enough is enough, but where do we really start? So I feel like my answer would be no as well, where events like these and Ahmaud, they lead to talks in Congress and they lead to talks, but what actually ever happens? I mean, actually physically or politically ever happens in the end that leads to any type of change, we're still dealing with the same things that we've been fighting from the original, like you said, the original, you know, battle from back then in the 60s to now. Not much has changed. I mean, we do have the right to vote, but as far as we're still fighting the same fight politically when it comes to racial and humanitarian rights. So I think one of the bigger solutions, or one of the bigger things to look at with this, is that we're being targeted on an international scale. Yes, definitely nationally, or, you know, here in the different states in America, but also on an international scale where we need to fight this on a more international scale, on a more humanitarian issue, and not just a civil rights issue. This is a way bigger thing for our community. So until we all start treating it as such, and not just when these incidents happen and just tweeting about it or posting about it for a week or two, or, you know, the Shade Room and a few other popular, you know, outlets, they'll post it. But what are we really physically doing outside of an organization starting after each of these individuals on a daily basis in our communities and on a political level on our communities to really try to bridge that gap between the lack of resources that we need and the lack of people who actually do care being in the right places at the right time to make the changes that need to happen?
Right. I mean, for me, I guess I'm in a different place with you ladies. I agree more with the opinion, but I think that we should go back to the hate crime law. If it's something that's going to give people a reference point, just the beginning, where we're in the conversation and we're like, hey, this is going on and we need to be a part of the change that we want to see. We need to be a part of the solution. It has to start somewhere, which means somebody has to be educated enough, not just to bring back the old hate crime law, but to really take it, make it their own, and make it applicable to our current life right now and what it looks like right now. And to me, That's extremely important. I'm thinking, you know, just briefly on the fact that when I see stories, the thing that hit me so hard about Breonna Taylor, I was talking to my husband and I was like, I remember being a little girl, and I don't know if you guys remember, but a story that was blown up was JonBenet Ramsey, a Caucasian little girl who was doing pageants, blonde, in Texas. And when she disappeared and then her death, like there's documentaries about it, there's all these things, and people really rally around stuff like that. But those people really rally around it. And we have to get to the point where we're doing the same thing, but we do need laws and statutes in place that are going to help us, because word to what you said before, Candi, it just gives us something to stand on. It gives us something solid to, we can walk in a courtroom and say, hey, but this is the law. Not just, hey, this is how we're feeling. Pay attention to how you've been hurting us for generations. This is black and white. What are we really going to do about it? And that's where I'm at. But I completely agree with both of your opinions. At a certain point, it's just like, what do you want us to do, and what do you want the response to be? On a little bit of a lighter note, there is something now called the HEROES Act. And according to Forbes.com, the HEROES Act actually looks like it's going to be the second round of stimulus checks, honey. But this time it looks as though these checks will actually include people who, you know, our nation considers illegal aliens. So, of course, you guys know, I want to know, what do you think about the HEROES Act, and is it necessary?
I do feel like there's always a little fine print that you don't find out till later in the game. But I definitely need to educate myself a bit more on it. But who can argue with that, especially with the climate that we're facing? I personally was supposed to go back to work last week, and I have another extension. So it's really piling on. It's really piling on, and bills keep coming. Everything seems to still be moving, even with the climate that we're in. So I can't argue with that as of now.
Right. So this is going back to when we first brought up the stimulus bill in our previous episode, and I was saying, how is adding on another few $1 trillion already on, you know, trillions of dollars with their debt ever going to help debt, right? So you have this debt and you're adding on more debt. How does that help, right? So I'm agreeing with Penny. There's always going to be some fine print on the latter end that we're never really going to see on the front end, right? So where you have plenty of Americans still in Penny's situation, haven't gone back to work, I'm looking more so on the macro level of when things do reopen. A lot of businesses have been out of, you know, operation for so long that the amount of people who are laid off, a majority of those people may not, or just say a large sum of those people will not be able to be reemployed, right? So this is definitely needed. Stimulate my bank account, stimulate. So I'm all for the stimulation of bank accounts, right? But let's be very frank. I do feel like it's going to have a negative long-term effect on the economy. Something's going to have to get paid back eventually. I don't know. I just look at our history when it comes to bailouts, and when it comes to these type of bills, whether it's stimulus or economic bailouts or economic shutdowns, we definitely always end up having to bounce back from it. So I think things are going to be really, really rough when things reopen, where a lot of people, I am advising people to just save this money as much as possible. Of course, pay bills, but save this money as much as possible and try to reinvest, because after things reopen, unemployment's going to run out, or, you know, no longer be available for those who've already collected for a certain amount. And it's going to be a lot of people who are still not going to be able to have employment. So it's going to be a tough cookie. That's all I'm going to say on it. But I'm all about the free checks. All for free checks. My people need it. So, yeah.
Candi, I can't play with you. I will say, I mean, let's be real about the real. We're talking about this is a $3 trillion bill that they're trying to pass. So it's definitely more as it regards to what you're saying about debt. I think the education about this round is important because the HEROES Act is, like I said, involving certain people who are here in the country, some illegally, some legally. but for them to be able to actually receive this benefit, whereas typically they wouldn't, even some people with a green card. But if you want to know more, I definitely suggest going to Forbes.com. It's on a lot of different websites. That's definitely not the only platform, because everyone's not going to get it. So even though you may have gotten the first round, that doesn't mean you're going to get this round. So just pay attention to what Candi is saying. Make sure you're saving. I'm trying to do the same thing. And in saving, try and make some sort of investment, even if it's in yourself. This is the time for you to go back to school. This is the time for you to learn a new skill, a trade, you know, expand your creativity, all of those things. This is the time for it. So ladies, that is the news for today, honey.
Now, I'm very excited to introduce our next guest. The Atlanta native is a musician, singer, songwriter, and producer. She made her first debut at Imagine Music Festival, and her latest single, Freedom, is available on all platforms. She's traveling the world sharing her gift, and we're happy to have her here with us today. Let's welcome SheBloom.
Hey.
Hi.
Welcome. Hey, girl.
Hey, what's up?
Thank you for taking the time to be with us today.
Of course. Yeah, it's so much fun. I love what you guys do.
Thank you so much. We really appreciate that. So when I first heard we were interviewing you, I'm like, ooh, SheBloom, that's a dope name. So what's the meaning behind SheBloom?
Thank you. Yeah, the name is more of a concept and a reminder for me to keep evolving, and it reminds my audience to also just forever keep evolving, keep blooming into the next layer. So,
oh my gosh, I love that. I absolutely love that. So tell us about your latest single, Freedom.
Right. Yeah. Freedom is like a femi-empowered track, kind of like a female anthem to spark just encouragement for women to stand up for themselves and for their bodies, claim ownership of that. And yeah, it's really cool. I mean, dudes are going to love it too. It's super vibey. It's all about equality for sure. And yeah, I'm really excited to have it out. It's like full production, drums, guitar, bass. So it was a little bit of a headache to get all the pieces together, but once it came out, I was pretty happy with it.
That's amazing. And it is an amazing record. I took a listen, and you guys should definitely check it out. I love it.
Thanks.
So you are incredibly multifaceted. Singer, songwriter, you play multiple instruments. What would you say found you first?
A piano.
How old were you?
Like 8 or 9.
Okay.
Wow.
That's amazing.
So I want to know, with everything you have going on, like, is it hard to like date? Is it hard to like, you know, find love? Like, what's going on, girl, with your dating life?
So I feel like it's hard for me to accept myself in a freelancing timeline, because as like a freelancer, your life is going to look different from like what an average like 9-to-5 life looks like. So I find myself judging myself, like how I'm spending my time, even though I'm spending it the way I believe is within my purpose. And it can be hard because I feel like maybe people from the outside world that don't do stuff like we do, they're judging me, and outer judgment, I can really let that get to me. Unfortunately. Regarding dating, I mean, I try, but the universe has been cock blocking me for over a year, because
Amen.
I'm trying to like, you know, do this with music, and I think the energy I have needs to be focused on that. So the universe just keeps cock blocking me.
No, it's okay. It happens to the best of us.
It really does, girl.
It really does. It happens.
And that's so real. I love that.
You know, with the fact that your song is called Freedom, and you're talking about it's a full production, you know, drums, bass, everything, it hits every mark. What do you feel like are 3 qualities that somebody needs to be able to call themselves free?
That's a good question. I would say the first is inner acknowledgement. That's more of a phrase than a word. Inner acknowledgement meaning you are acknowledging what is going on within you,
emotionally, the pain, physically, what you look like, just inner acknowledgement. All of that is inner. Second quality, I would say, is self-love. And the third, the third would be non-judgment. So
I like that. I definitely, we talk about it all the time. We all pro self-love in this joint. So
Yes, we do.
I think those are definitely three great things.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, for sure.
It's crazy. The word freedom itself, like speaking of freedom, we had Dara Carter previously on our podcast. And in my research, I saw that you co-wrote some of her Hello Freedom album. So what was it like collaborating with Dara?
So since Dara's my best friend, it's like I already know how she flows. She happens to be a Gemini, and in Ayurvedic science, that's like the sister science of yoga, Ayurveda. Underneath that knowledge, there's different doshas of how different mind-body types work, and we all have different doshas. So hers is Vata. That literally means air energy, flow. So that combined with being a Gemini, Dara is very much just in the flow. Everything has to feel really new. She can't be sitting down for too long. If she gets bored easily, she's going to switch gears. So like me knowing all of that, I have more earth energy. So I brought more of my earth for her to feel like secure, to feel like, this is a space where you can be whoever you want to be. And then wherever her weaknesses were, not weaknesses, but stuff she had trouble with, I guess, that's where I was coming in to support her. So I would help her with lyrics. I would help her if she got stuck. I would like jump on the keys and like make a new melody so that, new fresh air was coming into the room. Because if it gets too stagnant, that's when the production isn't flowing and it's not going to get finished. So things for her need to feel exciting. And I think I helped her kind of like, stay that way.
Definitely. It's an amazing album.
I love it.
You mentioned earth sign. What is your sign?
So I'm Capricorn.
Okay. Awesome. I'm an earth sign as well. I'm a Taurus. So you said earth. I was like, let's see what that's about.
Okay, girl. Yeah, my mom's a Taurus. She just had a birthday.
Nice.
And yeah, earth energy very much. But I also am very fire at the same time. Like I like to work and be of this world and like, putting in the work and doing things. So sometimes I need to remind myself to take a step back and like go into nature and like do stuff like that to ground myself again.
So since Dara is somebody like extremely well, you said she's your best friend. What is your process with someone who's not your best friend that you're co-writing for? Like what's the process? What are the tips? Where would you start?
That's am I allowed to cuss?
We try not to, but
that is a great question. Great question. So when I first started producing and collaborating, I was annoying. I would not listen to others. I would get anxious when the song didn't sound the way maybe I thought it was going to at first. And so all of this different mind activity, it creates this block. So things weren't always just getting done the way I thought they would get done. Nowadays, the first thing I do is I make sure I am vibrating with the person that I'm going to produce with. If they're on my level, then I can be in a space with them where I feel safe, because you're like opening your heart, you're like opening wounds to create music. So if it's someone toxic, if it's someone bad for me, I can't be around that. But if I do have to be with someone who maybe it's not a good energy pair, I practice mindfulness. I allow space between everything going on. Try not to talk too much. I try to listen to more like what they need rather than what I need. And then when they invite me to do something and help them, then I bring the heat. Because I know that, you know, whatever I come up with, they're going to love it. Because you can call it cocky, but I mean, that's just is my divine gift. So I've never had an unhappy client. Not yet. I'm sure that'll come as soon as I get more and more work. But I definitely try to like please them by listening to their needs first before mine.
That's amazing.
That's awesome.
Yes.
That is amazing. I'm a songwriter myself, so I know how it is. It's all about energy when it comes to creativity. And if there's a block there, you just can't work. So that makes
right. And I was just going to say, I'm a Gemini too. So me being that air sign, I'm real flowy, real big on energy and vibes. And I'm an artist, like Penny said. So when I'm trying to help someone write something or collaborate, people love, especially in Atlanta, people love like, let's collab. And it's like, I have to see where the vibe is, you know, like
right.
It's very hard to collaborate with someone when you're not vibing on the same frequency. And I feel you have to just allow that space to be there where they let you in. And then you can just, you have to come with it at that point. Cause it's a hit or miss. I'm either going to work with you or I'm not.
Right.
But yeah, I understand. I like that. I love that method. That's great.
Yeah. Thank you. It took a while.
Yeah. Who is someone you like to collab with next?
Someone I would like to collab with next. This guy named Alex Harris. He's based in California, but he's lived in Atlanta for a little bit. He is just a dope, like, friend of mine. I think he's in LA right now. I like collaborating with people who are easy to like reach out to right now. Like, of course, I could be on this podcast and be like Alicia Keys, but like I'm trying to, you know, do a little bit at a time, like a little bit of growth at a time, so I don't get too ahead of myself. Who else? I'm sure there's somebody else. Angel White is another like Atlanta-based artist I'd like to collaborate with, who's dope. And I mean, like, I love Baby Rose. If she would fuck with me, like, I could make, I'm sorry.
You're fine. Let it flow, girl. Let it flow.
I could make her a beat. I could do harmonies for her. Cause her, if you guys haven't heard of Baby Rose, she has this really unique, like, old school, old timey type voice that you just don't really get anymore. And like only a Black woman has to sing like that. Like it's a deep soul that's resonating from like wherever she's from and her ancestral pattern. You can feel it in the music. It's very emotional. And I love to just like sprinkle that with some of my like bright, youthful tone. I think it would be a really cool like cultural type of mixture in a song. That would be cool.
Yeah, that sounds like it would sound dope.
Who is your favorite artist right now?
Probably Alicia Keys. She has been giving me so much uplift with her new songs coming out, and I just vibe with her so hard. She is just authentically herself. She's never tried to be anything else. She hardly wears any makeup. She's kind of like has this tomboy thing going on, so she really resonates with somebody like me. Yeah.
That's amazing. I love that. She is someone that's really true to herself. So with woman empowerment, is that something you've always been super passionate about? Did it resonate with you more as you got older and came into your womanhood?
Right. It's funny because it's like you don't really feel inclined to be part of women empowerment until you start seeing examples in your own life where people are stepping on you. And that started happening to me 5 years ago when I started waitressing. I started seeing not only the restaurant industry, people try to excuse the behavior and they say, oh, it's because you're in the restaurant industry, but that's not the case. There's like all kinds of different clientele coming in that you get to serve. And I just noticed a lot of excused behavior on men, where I was being put down as a woman. I was being spoken to a certain way because I am a woman. And there were all these very specific programmings that, you know, need to be rewritten. And I don't blame people who have come up with a past programming, because you got to think about what's their dad, how did their dad treat them, how did their mom treat them, and like, so I try not to get mad at the person, but I do get mad at the programming. So when that started occurring, that's when I started becoming like way more sassy, way more like, I would just straight up be like, you can't talk to me like that. Sorry, you're talking to the wrong person. I wouldn't even say woman. I would just be like, you're talking to the wrong person. And I would just, just be a little rebellious around certain behavioral patterns like that. Like I would kind of throw it back, and yeah, there's a little bit of anger that kind of would come at that, trying to dial it more into this peaceful equality type vibe. But I think it's okay to get a little angry sometimes about it, because I mean, we're just up against like a huge force, a huge masculine energetic that continues to try to stomp on us. And like, no matter what race you are, no matter what country you live in, like all the women, we are getting stomped on in all the different countries. It's crazy. Some countries you can't even show your hair except for to your husband. Now, who do you think wrote that rule? So it's like, so women empowerment, I mean, it sounds so cliche, and I hate that it sounds cliche. So I'm trying to just rewrite it into my music seamlessly, so that all genders can listen and kind of get the new codes. You know what I mean?
Definitely. And I like that you use the word programming. Are you a fan of the 4 Agreements?
I am. Yeah. Haven't.
That's one of my favorite books.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask, because I asked SheBloom what are 3 things or 3 qualities that she feels like someone would have to achieve or have to call themselves free. And to what you're saying about just women in different industries or women in general across the nation or internationally, what was it that you acknowledged in yourself where you realized you did need to be a supporter of women empowerment? Because I know for me, when I think about inner acknowledgement and what changed me as I was getting older, I realized like how negative what I was about myself. And when I saw somebody doing that same thing, I'd be like, ugh. And then I'm like, oh man, like that is bad. Like that's a poor quality to have, because it's part of that judgment, which was also one of the things you said, non-judgment. So what did you have to acknowledge that you did to make you realize or have the revelation like, oh, I need to be more empowering or encouraging to my female counterparts?
Right. I let a lot of people take advantage of me in a lot of different ways. So that went on for so long. I thought it was part of my personality to just allow things to happen, shake things off that were bothering me, and kind of just be this sponge that just soaks up like all this pain and hurt. And, hurt people. So all the people that have ever hurt me in my life, I know that they were hurt too. And instead of trying to be this, well, first putting up boundaries, I never did that. No one ever taught me that. It's funny, like you can grow up well-fed, have middle-class parents, live in the United States, but you can still be very like poor in spirit or very poor like emotionally. And so like my emotional piggy bank was so like low. I didn't love myself. That's why I didn't have boundaries. And I would just let all kinds of toxicity, literally like on a holistic level, this toxicity has become evident even in my own like physicality, because I believe, mind, body, spirit, all connected. So I see how this problem of soaking in these toxins really have just like hurt me and weared me down. So I think that's what really inspired me to break free from all of those past behaviors and start putting up boundaries, because I needed them for myself and get well again, like mentally and emotionally.
Kudos to you spiritually for acknowledging your demons, tackling your demons, and ridding your demons. A lot of us, we don't do that for ourselves, and we're constantly out here dating, trying to create relationships and friendships, and just exchanging energies with others, not realizing that we're exchanging good and negative energies. And that's just a way to tackle generational curses and just tackle, like you said, just tackle the negative energy and get rid of it. So kudos to you. Many more people need to do that. I mean, regardless of race or gender, of ethnicity, or sexuality, we've all been through so much. It's a lot of, like you said, masculine or just a lot of negative or overpowered energy, where a lot of us just have to just love ourselves enough to just really deal with our own issues and demons and not be willing to move them on to or give them on to the next person. So that's what's up.
Well said.
Definitely. So what is next? What can we look forward to from SheBloom?
Well, I'm going to keep cranking out songs for the rest of the year. I don't really have a plan of how to grow me as a business quite yet, but I do have a manager that is supporting me. So just having that is really helpful. I hope to keep collaborating as much as I can and get people in my studio. I just sound treated a section of my room and it's sounding amazing. I invested in a new microphone. So I would love to have different musicians come over and, you know, for a small price, I can like hook them up with a new song, you know, within a few hours if they don't have anywhere to go to, because, you know, studios are expensive. So really just a lot of creation. Of course, I want to play some more shows. I just don't know what that's going to look like for a while. It's so sad. But I'm always praying for the next sign and the next step, because I can make a 6-month plan and then universe just throws it up, crashes it down, and then it's just something entirely different.
Definitely it happens. And I wouldn't mind a SheBloom virtual concert. Just saying.
Yeah. I've written notes on it. I'm just trying to figure out like where should I do it, because my Facebook audience is kind of like not dead, but my algorithm's really messed up. And then Instagram's probably going to be the route to go. I would just need to be sure there's enough people there. So we'll figure it out.
Yeah. How can our plugs find you?
So you can find me at SheBloom Instagram, SheBloom Music Facebook. I would recommend going on my YouTube because I'm doing more covers as well this year. You can just search SheBloom Music or SheBloom Burn. That's my music video. It's my only one that's up right now. I think that's the only places I'm at. SheBloom.co is my website. Go join my newsletter. I send like monthly encouragements to people.
Yes, definitely check her out. SheBloom, thank you so much for joining us. Everyone, make sure you check out her latest single, Freedom, and also those covers. Her Kalani F and Me You cover was dope. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks, y'all. Thank you so much.
All right, plugs. So moving right along into the juicy topic. You guys voted and you guys selected interracial dating. Sip tea. Okay. So, you know, I feel like this is a great juicy topic because we all talk about it. This is like girls talk for real, okay? Like we all talk about dating outside of our race, but not many of us have done it. I feel like some of us are scared. Some of us are really impressionable about what others may think about it. So the first question that I'm going to ask you ladies is, like, what are some of the main reasons that you think that people or yourselves may have dated outside of your race? So I think it may be to like try something new. Or sometimes my friends who are like a little bit darker say that they literally get treated a little bit better from guys outside of their race, right? So I really have to get your opinion, Miss SheBloom, girl. So like, are you with it? Are you against it? And like, if you are or not, like, what do you think, like, some of the main reasons that people may try it, you know?
Word. I am very, very with it. Very much with it. Let's see, the reasoning of maybe why I started. I mean, when I was younger, I was with it. Like, it just kind of was, okay, someone's personality, their spirit beams at me first. I swear. That's what I feel first, like their spirit. So like, no matter what their skin color is, I can definitely still resonate with somebody. On a more surface level, I think people that look different are beautiful. Like, I like trying out new things for sure, because it's like, you know, different body types, different ways of like behaving, like perhaps during sex, or like perhaps like how they spend their time late at night, like just different ways of living. And, you know, as well as career choices too. Like, there's all kinds of different artists and musicians I know that are not white, and I just vibe with them so hard because they're chasing after their dream, and like, they happen to not be white, but like, you know, there's a lot of just different darker skinned people out here in Atlanta, and so many musicians, they're taking over the music industry. Like, so I don't know.
Okay, so hold on. I know you say you're women, so that means that you've had a few.
Oh yes,
girl. Oh.
Just last week. I have a big mouth. I should not be saying that.
It's okay. You just say no names. It's no name, no blame.
No name.
So, Penny, you know, I have to reel you in, honey, because you always try to pull away. What is your intake on, like, what are some of the reasons that you think people or yourself may have initially, you know, dated outside of their race, or, you know, engaged in interracial dating?
So I did date a gentleman outside of my race before. It was an interesting experience because we completely different cultures, different languages for the most part as well. But I can only speak for me, and I dated outside of my race because I just met someone and there was a mutual attraction and I wanted to get to know him. I'm not someone that has an ulterior motive or anything like that. When I date someone, like SheBloom was saying, it's, you know, the energy, it's the vibe that you get. You shouldn't just date someone because they're a different race. And I have noticed that a little bit, where I was told by, I always bring up something from the past, but anywho, I was told mid-argument by an ex, or my boyfriend at that time, man, if this don't work out, I swear I'm not dating no more black girls.
That's messed up.
You know, so sometimes it's like you are also saying the programming. Sometimes it's just also the picture that you have from your point of view against a group of people. And some cases it is your own, but I think it really all depends. But for me, there wasn't any reason for going outside of my race. There just wasn't.
Just that attraction, and I can respect that. How about you, Levina? Have you ever dipped and dabbed into the interracial dating pool? Mm-hmm.
Well, listen. Okay, so I mean, everybody's clear. Everyone knows I'm married. But prior to my husband, all I did was date outside of my race. All the time. It was, I can't even say like I had any type of real logic behind it, other than the fact that, to me at that time, based on who I was, it felt better to me. It looked better to me. And in that time, I felt like I was getting treated better. I also dated older, so they were outside of my race, but they were way older than me. So people who were established that could give me the things that I couldn't get at the age that I was at. I was definitely trying to get some benefits. Like, you know, you got to be real about the real. Like, I was definitely trying to, you know, I'm trying to go to Cancun. Like, who? I'm trying to go. Like, I'm trying to go. So I did that. But in that, what I learned was I just didn't understand a lot of different perspectives. And something that I have always been against is just doing something for the sake of. Like, I never want to be the person that's doing something for the sake of. So even with my husband now, I remember when we first got married, and you guys know I'm half Puerto Rican, and I'm half Black. But people would be like, oh, Black love. And I was like, why you got to put a label on it? Why it can't just be love? Like, why you got to say that? And it offended me. But now, as I've gotten older and I'm more understanding just of, honestly, the Black experience by way of my mother being an African-American woman and a single mother, and seeing my husband and, you know, his situation, all of those aspects of life, I understand why people start saying stuff like that. Right. But then I also am a huge lover of, even in my youth, like, do you guys know who the Lovings are from Virginia? The Lovings were like the first interracial couple in Central Virginia. It was a biracial woman and a white man, and it was actually illegal. It was so illegal that people like busted in their house and arrested them. It was crazy. If you never heard about the Lovings, definitely go read about them. There's also a movie, phenomenal. But that also inspired me to kind of definitely be outside of the box. Like, what do I want to be? I want to, you know, I'm thinking I'm about to be a part of history. I'm doing something. But I don't see anything wrong with it. I definitely think love is love. And if that's what you have found, you hold on to it. It doesn't matter what the person looks like. Unfortunately, I think the reason why interracial dating is such a hot topic is because some people just don't want to see it. To some people, it's offensive. I have been out, like I just posted on social media today, but I was in Alabama, and this man straight up told me, he was like, yo, you need not be out with your wife after 6 o'clock out here because she looks white and you might get lynched. Like,
was this recent?
About 3 months ago. About 3 months ago, we went to the memorial in Alabama while visiting my husband's parents. And yeah, it was recent. It was nothing for him to say it. To him, It was second nature based on what he sees, because that's what interracial dating is. It's based on what someone else sees. It's not the love that is inside of the relationship. It's a eye gate perspective. So I've done it. Obviously, I'm married now, so it's not on the table for me anymore. But if you find love, honey, you go with that. That's what's important. And don't be like the old me trying to get some benefits. That's not worth it either. Just do it yourself. Be your own boss. It ain't worth it.
Yes, and I'm all for the mutual attraction and also just having a higher connection to someone. So outside of the physical, just really having like a more spiritual or emotional or mental vibration or vibe with someone, and just kind of going from there. And I do feel like when it comes down to that, you can't control who you have those connections with, right? So it happens all the time. You could be out catching brunch, you could be out getting hookah, you could be out in the grocery store, and you just genuinely can't help who you connect with sometimes. So I think as long as it's genuine, that's a good foundation, because interracial or not, there's no guarantee that anything's going to work out. So be optimistic and be open. So that goes into my next question, which are, you know, like, what are some of the benefits of interracial dating? And then, like, what are some of the cons? So, like, pros and cons, right? So, for me, I know I've never dabbed into it, but a lot of women who I used to, like, get mentorship when I was a little bit younger from marketing, or who were a little bit more established in their career, a lot of them said that they were open to it simply because once they got into economic status, or they got further down the line in their career, when it came to women of color in corporate, they were seeing that it really wasn't that many Black guys in corporate that were making the same amount of money as them, or it was harder for them the more they climbed the economic ladder to find someone who was their racial counterpart, if you would say that. So I think that that's a big one that, I feel like a lot of us don't consider, that a lot of times it can be more financially stable. I'm talking about where it comes to, like, people coming from minority communities or poor communities dating outside of their race. The other person can be more financially stable. But one of the cons that I do find a lot, because y'all know I'm nosy and I ask people about their relationships all the time, is that, it can be like you were talking about, sometimes it can be hard to relate culturally. So it's like, naturally, I may vibe with you, but we were raised differently, or we have different morals, or we have different beliefs, where when it comes down to certain things, we may clash a lot because we just naturally can't relate to one another, right? So, I got to go back to you, SheBloom, girl, and get your, take on it. Like, in your opinion, what are some of the pros and cons in your personal experience, or just from like your friends, when it came to like interracial dating?
Whew. Well, I feel like I should only speak for myself, because my own experience it's the only thing I have to go off of. I think my pros were, I felt seen by someone outside of maybe how I appear. So like, yes, I have some English, Italian, yada, yada, but I am part Nicaraguan. My mother's from Nicaragua. So like, appearance has always been, it's been confusing for me because I never really identified as anything. I actually used to be called a mutt. So I kind of was just like, well, let's just explore and see who will just see me, right? So yeah, like I remember the first Black boyfriend I had, I did feel like he really saw me, and he actually seemed to be more like emotionally connected with me than maybe some white dudes I had dated. I'm not sure why. I don't really have a theory on it, but I definitely have noticed dating men of African American descent, like they seem to be more in touch with a sensitivity that I didn't see in maybe some white guys. So that was a pro for me personally. Perhaps another pro is just to get more educated, honestly, on the other perspectives of their reality. I've had, boyfriends or lovers, whatever you want to call it. Let's say we're walking down the street, we're in Atlanta, and they're getting paranoid that I'm on my phone. And they're telling me like, hey, eyes up. Like, we're walking, like, just, I need your eyes up, right? Or like, perhaps, I don't know, I forgot to lock my car. And they're like, you should probably lock your car. So it's just one of these safety things I noticed more in Black males that I had dated rather than white males. They seem to be a little more cautious, a little more protective of me. That was just my experience with it. And it did educate me to keep my eyes open and not pretend like I'm in this fantasy world where nothing can hurt me, because things can hurt me, and things have hurt, the African American community far worse. And I'm aware of that ignorance, but the only thing I can do is admit the ignorance and ask for help and ask for people to help me open my eyes. So that was another pro. A con is uniquely also kind of a pro. A con was probably just feeling like kind of dumb about maybe how they have lived their life culturally and how they view maybe their finances or their family dynamic, or just all kinds of different things of how they're treating their life versus me, that I would feel kind of like, oh, I kind of need to get my stuff together in that area of life, because you seem to be more focused on it than I am, and I'm not quite sure why. Perhaps it's because you've had to maybe struggle harder than me in certain areas. So that's kind of a con, because I had to deal with that internally, like feeling uneducated with that experience, but welcoming it and realizing like, okay, they're not judging me, they're just being themselves, and I'm learning from it. So
it's giving you that insight that you probably wouldn't have gotten from dating someone, like you said, like the other white guys that you've dated. So, yes. And I can respect that. And yes. You know what, you really hinted on my next question, and Penny, I'm going to you first, so get prepared. Which is when you are interracial child, right? Because interracial couples and marriages produce interracial children. So how are interracial children affected in all of this? Like you said, it's hard for people to recognize sometimes, like growing up, like when you look one thing, but you may really be something else.
Something else. Yeah.
Right. What do I do? Right. So Penny, let me get your insight, and then we have to go to Levina because I know she has her personal insight. We can't let her not give us. So what do you say, Penny, about like how do you think interracial children or biracial children are affected where, some may look white, but they're really, mixed with black, or some may look black and they're really Hispanic. Like, how do you think that affects children?
My mom is Jamaican and Cuban, and of her siblings, she was always the lightest and closer to my grandmother in color. And she would tell me stories of how she felt out of place because it's like, oh, she, because she looked different from everyone else. So in terms of a biracial child here in America, you hear the stories where, oh, like, let's just say white and black, where, oh, I'm not black enough for the black community, I'm not white enough for the white community. So you do feel that sense of not knowing where you fit in, not knowing where to kind of take your place and get in where you fit in. It goes both ways though, because I'd also be lying if I said it's not a lot more socially acceptable to be racially ambiguous. So I see where it can definitely affect the child, and it can come to a head with self-identity and how they feel about themselves that can carry on even into adulthood.
What about you, Levina? What do you give me? You have to give me your insight. Like, give me some of your personal insight from growing up and what you went through, or some trials and tribulations that you went through. Was it difficult to recognize looking, being lighter, but actually being biracial? Like,
It was. So the first part I'll tell you is my family, my cousins actually had a running joke that they were the outside of the apple and I was the inside of the apple. And that was a running joke for like years. They'd be like, yo, we the outside of the apple and Levina is the inside. And it was like, but as a kid, I would be like, man, like, what's wrong with me? Like, why am I so light? Which then led me to, ask more questions. And then obviously in asking more questions and talking to my mom, she gave me insight, because you guys know, unfortunately, I've never met my father. I don't know who he is, but she told me about him. She told me his name. His last name's Alvarez. So she was like, he's Puerto Rican, and she gave me like the whole rundown of how they met and what it was like then. And so for me, there was a harder connection as well too, because you guys know my mom is also in the military. So I was an Army brat. So we moved like every year or every other year. So finding people to connect with was difficult in general. And then trying to figure out like where I fit in. Like even right now, y'all know I be talking about my white legs all the time. Like I have no color right now because I can't be outside. But because of that, it just put me in a place where people would be like, well, what are you? And I'm like, what does that mean? Well, what are you? Well, I don't know. Like my mom is black and my daddy's Puerto Rican. So whatever that means. Or people would assume, especially once I was older and then I went into the corporate world, people would just assume, and they would be like, oh, because Levina, you're black and white, so you get it. And I'd be like, no, you didn't ask me a question. Like, that's not, no. So it is very difficult. And word to what Penny said, there is a way that I have to register that in the world and in America, that I do have more privileges than another woman who is darker than me. And it is a perspective that I constantly have to speak from, because even though I see myself, as predominantly black because I was raised by my mom, and you guys know my husband is black, my children, they're a fourth Puerto Rican, but because that was the experience I was having, that's where I speak from. But to some people, that's offensive. So I have to have that awareness at all times. And so me speaking about my experience, it sometimes goes really well. Like some people get it and sometimes people don't. But as a child specifically, it's just really hard to fit in general. And like there was, as a child, like there was this girl who would tie my hair in knots at nap time. And she would be like, you're not supposed to sleep next to us. So because I was too light. So she would tie my hair in knots, and every time I would be close to her at nap time, she would tie my hair in knots because I was too light. And those are the things that I feel like are taught. Because even when I take my daughter to daycare, there was a little white boy and they would hold hands and eat breakfast together. They don't see that. They don't understand it. They don't know. So unless I tell my daughter, hey, that little boy is white, feel some type of way about it, she doesn't know and she doesn't care. All she knows is love. And I think that is the perspective that people have to understand when it regards children, because that's the thing that's going to impact a future relationship that has the potential to be interracial, so they can understand it.
Right. And you prompted on a prominent point. And the last point that I really wanted to wrap everything up with was just love. It starts from the home, right? And no child is born knowing what good and bad is. No child is born knowing what curse words are and good words are. Everything is learned behavior. So these children are being taught, like Levina said, exactly how to view one another, how to view color, and how to view love. So I'm all for just being real with yourself and being real with one another. Really, even if you're dating people in the same race, just genuinely be real with yourself if you're attracted to someone for something higher, and not just how they look. After you get the physical and the sexual attraction out of the way, I'm real big on chakras and energy. That's root chakra. That's real lower energy. Let's get to a more elevated connection, spiritual, conscious, mental, emotional. And if you do vibe or have a connection with someone on a higher level, then honor that and take that. And if you guys do come together and make a family or biracial child, then just knowing that you brought your child forth on that type of love and that type of energy is already putting them ahead of people who are biracial or not, right? So thank you, ladies, so much for your insight. Thank you. That was a great juicy topic. Thank you so much, SheBloom, for joining us for the juicy topic. And we had a blast interviewing you. Thank you for participating.
Thank you.
You got to come back and chat with us again. You got to.
Yes.
Hang out. I want to hang out. I want y'all to feel
Yes.
me. I want you to really get to know me. I feel you. You guys this honestly really inspired me. Like, you inspired me more than I thought this was going to be. So, like, thank you for enlightening me. Yeah.
We loved having you. Thank you.
We really did. Thank you so much. So, my penny for your thought today for this episode is circling back around to Levina's news topic and the racial injustice that has been occurring for quite some time. It is a quote from the late and great Malcolm X. Also, happy belated birthday to Malcolm X as well, fellow Taurus spirit. And it is, you can't separate peace from freedom, because no one can be at peace unless he has his freedom. And that is today's penny for your thought.
Yes, honey. I love that. I love that, Penny. And I definitely think that that's the most important thing. And to what SheBloom was saying, that inner acknowledgement and truly having the understanding, not just that you feel free, but you are free. Like, we're in a time where literally, everybody is in quarantine and it is possible to feel any kind of way. And it's important to know that you're free and you have the freedom to do whatever you want. Take this time to recreate yourself or whatever you want to do. Literally, the sky is the limit. So thank you guys so much for plugging in with us for yet another episode.
Thank you, guys.
Make sure you guys follow us on all of our social platforms. That is Instagram and Facebook at womenunplugged_. And of course, here on YouTube at Women Unplugged Podcast. We love to hear from you. Make sure you comment, like, and subscribe. Make sure you are following us on Instagram, because much like today, you guys choose the topic and the tea you want to hear. So that is the show for today, and we will see y'all next week or in a few weeks.
Thanks, Plug.
Thanks, Plugs. We love you guys.